They're like this all day long. Who would be a parent Currawong? As you know, our property is off-grid for water and power. And I haven't spoken at much detail yet about the power situation. And we've actually got someone coming to the house tomorrow because we've been having problems with the system. So I thought it would be an apposite time to introduce you and talk a bit about it, because it might be easy to imagine that everything was fine and dandy all the time here, but it isn't. We do have problems, and I think it's important to discuss those. We only had, I think, 10 panels on a different location, and they were probably operating at about, at tops, 30% of their capacity. The panels had gone orange. Basically, they weren't collecting very much sun. We also had a very old lithium-ion battery. We actually had two, and they were clearly pretty much past it. And the whole system was 12 volts, which did have some advantages. I won't deny that, actually, but it's also, these days at least, considered, so I gather, to be quite inefficient. We lived like that for a while, but it increasingly became difficult during winter in particular, so we could only really have the power on between about 10 and say 6 in the evening at best, and then we could only really have very limited things on, and after that time we had to switch over to using only things that were battery powered, battery lights or candles. Anyway, last year, almost exactly to the day, we upgraded our system, and we had more solar panels, and we had them moved to a different location. So this is some of them, and this is the rest of them. So we went from having 10 to 16, and that's counted, so like that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, not 1 and 2. So in total we've got 16. For those of you who are interested in stats, we have a 48 volt off-grid system now. We have 16 solar panels which generate 330 watts. We have a 48 volt 10 kilowatt hour lithium battery and an 8,000 watt 48 volt inverter. And this is where most of that equipment that's not the solar panels live. So let me show you. This is our inverter. As I say, it's a 48 volt inverter working away currently. And this is our lithium-ion battery. And then this is the rest of the fancy electronics. It's been working fine, but this summer has been pretty average, and only really since about Christmas and New Year actually the weather picked up, and ever since then we've been having problems, and I'll put in some footage now of what's been happening. And essentially that fault means an overcurrent. My understanding of this overcurrent or overvoltage is basically the panels are generating more power than it's being used, which is causing the voltage here, as you can see, currently at 230 volts, that's the power that's going to the house, causes that to go up to maybe about 250. The inverter itself gets pretty hot and then it just shuts itself down, I assume to protect itself. The consequence of that though is that it also disconnects the power supply to the house. Now I'm not entirely sure what's causing it. I know that the conditions in which that happens are always really sunny days and days where it's about 27 degrees or hotter. This has prompted me to also investigate the possibility of having a backup generator installed, what I'm quite keen to get is just a little generator that will come on automatically when the power goes down. So I don't even have to think about it other than just topping it up with fuel and keeping the occasional eye on it. And that will be handy come winter, because we have found, even with all this extra capacity and more efficiency and blah blah blah, if it's a very, very bad winter, very dingy, gloomy, around about midwinter, we're still running out of power. So I think another fix that we might like to explore is adding another battery. That's for down the line though, because they're vastly expensive. And putting another solar panel on this roof. This is where the solar panels were originally. They went this way along the roof to catch the sun. The sun rises there. So they would catch most of the sun. But at the moment, all of this is in light whilst the house is in shade. So I was thinking having a solar panel this direction to catch this evening light once the sun's gone beyond the house and the trees and re-emerged here. To give us extra light. But we'll see. If the generator's enough, that's enough. I don't want to spend more money than I have to, but I just want a system that I know I can rely upon and that's meeting our needs. Well, here I am in Will's car yet again. We're off for an overnight trip actually this time. I'll probably try and film some of where we are, some of the scenery. We're going a bit further west. We're going further west to a different part of Victoria. It's a few hours drive away. So I've not taken you to this part of the country yet, so I thought it might be something a bit different. You find me here just about to make sauerkraut. Our neighbour came round with a cabbage and we already have quite a lot of cabbage, so rather than let it go to waste or let the slugs get to it, we've got a bit of a slug invasion going on at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to turn it into sauerkraut, and I just thought I'd just quickly show you how I do it. It's so easy. You probably know how to do it anyway, but it's so quick and easy, I thought I might as well film it. So what I do is I start with about half of the cabbage and I cut it as finely as I can, which admittedly isn't particularly fine. I shred it into fine strips and I put it in a bowl, and basically I keep going until I've filled the bowl. I then add about 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and I add some seasoning. I've added to this some ginger and some caraway seeds. The next part of the process is to get in with your hands and crush it all up. I usually make sauerkraut with red cabbage, and that will stain your hands, so I have got into the habit of making sauerkraut whilst wearing gloves. So after about 7 minutes, you can see and hear all the liquid that's coming out of that. I've added no water, as you will have noticed, I hope. This is all just the natural water from within the cabbage. And you'll also notice how much less cabbage there is now. Well, obviously it's the same amount of cabbage, but it's been severely reduced. What I'm going to do now is add it to my sterilised jar. So I'll just pick it up, drop it in, and then I'm going to pour this remaining liquid and cabbage into the jar. Then what I like to do is grab a rolling pin and bash this all down so the cabbage is nice and compacted. And the reason I'm bashing it down is because I want the liquid to get in amongst all of the cabbage, but I want the cabbage to be below as well, the layer of liquid. In order for it to ferment safely, it needs to be in an anaerobic environment, which means that no bacteria can reach the cabbage and spoil it. And the way that I'm creating the anaerobic environment with the sauerkraut is by having it buried under water. And then in order to ensure that it stays under the water, I like to take a leaf of the cabbage and put it into the jar and essentially use this to keep the fermenting cabbage submerged. Now I'm going to put my lid on. This is a special fermentation jar which has an airlock. You don't have to use one of these. Some people don't cover their sauerkraut at all. It's possible to make it just in any old jar, which I used to do. But do beware that what has sometimes happened to me in the past during the fermentation process, especially if the jar's pretty full, liquid can escape from the jar. Basically, this is creating pressure, and liquid will escape from the jar and go everywhere. So keep that in mind if you're not going to be using an airlock and just using a sealed jar. As I say, the way some people get around that is basically just having an open bowl with a weight in it. I don't do that. I would do that, but I don't do that just because I know from my own experience of living in this house how many rodents, insects, slugs, spiders, little tiny flies come in the house and end up in the cupboard behind me, my pantry. So I wouldn't feel that was very sanitary in my environment, but if you have a house that's not so plagued by wildlife, that might work for you. A little bit of business has brought me north of home, and I don't know if you'll be able to see, but in the tree there is a koala. I think it might be a mother and baby. It's a bit gloomy. Let me see if I can brighten it. Not really. I don't know how well you can see. is just there. Well, actually, there's one there too. There's actually two there. Right in the middle. They're so hard to see. That one's having a scratch. I might have seen it move. I tried to get a bit closer. I don't know if you'll be able to see anything too clearly. I've zoomed in, so it's a bit wobbly. And also it's a grey day. And koalas aren't small, but they're surprisingly well camouflaged against the leaves and the bark. There's one there in the middle, munching away a bit in the crook of this branch, sleeping away. I can't really brighten him up, but that's the koala there. Might even be two of them. There's one there, the one we were looking at before. There's another one there. This tree, not that long ago, had way more leaves on it than this. It's not really something you see back home. I'm home now and it's the end of my filming week, so I thought I'd just give you a couple of quick updates and mop up some loose ends. Firstly, dun dun dun, this was the location of the grevillea I planted in a recent video. Sorry about the light, you probably can't really see, but this is what remains of it. Something's come along and munched it. In spite of my best efforts. This is the second time only that one of these cages has failed to function, so that's a pity. Puts me in a bit of a dilemma actually. Should I replace it or would that defeat the point? Anyway, I'll think about that. And lastly, a quick update on the solar situation. So the people who installed the system came back, and essentially what they have done is install a second isolator switch. So these are the switches that make the power from the solar panels go into the inverter. Or the other way around, no, I don't know. We had one originally, and apparently we should have had two. Unfortunately, that hasn't fixed the problem of the overcurrent. So what they are having me trial now is having only one isolator switched on, so essentially one bank of panels is providing our power and the other bank is switched off. And if it happens again, I'll turn that one on and turn that one off, and if it doesn't happen, that might be a clue, and if it happens again, it's back to the drawing board. We're not due another bout of weather where it's likely to turn the inverter off for a few days, so we'll wait and see. I hope you have a good weekend if you have one, and if you don't, I hope you enjoy your weekend when it comes. Bye.